Hey, welcome. This is the Sleeping at Last podcast. My name is Ryan O'Neill. I make music under the name Sleeping at Last, and I am so grateful that you are here. Thank you so much for pressing play. Today, I am so excited to talk to you about my Atlas project and a brand new song that belongs to Atlas called Bloom Eros. For anyone not super familiar with my projects, I wanted to give a brief overview. So I make a lot of music, and I have three primary projects that I'm usually writing songs for, all of which are under the Sleeping at Last umbrella. The first is called Astronomy, which are songs inspired by astronomical events and discoveries. So when something super cool happens in the observable universe, I try to write a soundtrack of sorts for that event. An example is the recent total solar eclipse in the US, or the launch of the James Webb Space Telescope, or Comet Neowise, things like that. Another project of mine is called Atoms, which are tiny songs, usually a minute or so long, inspired by moments of beauty that I come across in my daily life. The way sunlight moves between leaves or how water reflects light. I'll stop and I'll take a small video on my phone, and then I'll go back to the studio and write a little mini soundtrack to that video and moment. And it helps me catch my breath and pay closer attention to what seems like ordinary beauty around me. And then there's Atlas, my main song project. The definition of the word atlas is a book of maps or charts. And that's sort of what this long-form project is. It's a collection of themes and ideas, and it's me exploring as much of this life as possible through lyrics and songs. And so Atlas is the home to songs like Saturn and all of my Enneagram songs. I think the simplest way to understand these three Sleeping at Last projects and how they work together is astronomy is my telescope. Atoms is my microscope, and Atlas is the human experience in between the micro and the macro of life. Both astronomy and atoms are ongoing projects, and so they have no end in sight. And in the case of astronomy, the universe will continually be amazing and will be inspiring, and I have no plans to retire that project anytime soon. And then atoms is the same kind of thing. It's limited to my ability to appreciate beauty around me, and so that is an ongoing project as well. But Atlas has a little bit of a different story. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and so Atlas is a trilogy. And it began, of course, with Atlas 1, which contained 30 songs inspired by the origins of the universe, exploring darkness, light, space, which included a song for each of the planets in our solar system, the theme of land, a song for each of the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, and then ended with oceans, a song for each of our Earth's oceans. And water always leads to life, and so Atlas 2 is inspired by involuntary human development. It's all about life. I wrote a song for each of the five senses: sight, smell, taste, hearing, and touch. A song for each of our basic core emotions, intelligence, and the theme of the Enneagram of personality, songs for each of the 9 Enneagram types. And that brings us to Atlas 3, which is exactly where I am right now. It will become 25 plus songs inspired by voluntary human development. So it explores all that we do with all that we're given. Now, Atlas 3 actually began a few years ago with a song called Overture 3, Awake. And it continued with its sibling song, Asleep. And then right around that time in 2022, my mom very, very unexpectedly passed away. And I've shared a lot about this in previous episodes, but in the wake of losing her, I found it incredibly hard to return to writing Atlas songs, partly because it didn't feel right to carry on without her, especially in something that she had such a huge impact on. My mom was my manager, and everything Sleeping at Last that exists is the shape that it is because of her absolute support, guidance, love, and she just helped me build this whole thing that I get to do. And so I found it really, really hard to return to writing these Atlas songs because it just kind of felt off topic to where I was personally at. I kept asking myself, how do I continue to write in these meticulously laid out themes when all I'm feeling is grief? And so I needed to write about that. I needed to process that and process such a huge loss in my world, which became the mother collection of songs that I wrote last year. And between those songs and therapy and time and family and friends, it has all aided in my healing process, to the point where today I get to announce that Atlas 3 continues right now, and I'm so honored to pick up where I left off. For anyone that has been listening or anticipating Atlas 3, thank you so much for your patience as I walk through these last couple of years. It means the world to me. Before we dive into my brand new Atlas 3 song, Bloom, Eros, and how it came to be, I wanted to also announce a change that I've made to the Atlas 3 subscription. Previously, anyone that wanted to hear my new Atlas songs early ahead of their public release, there was a paid subscription in place. And now I am actually making the Atlas subscription entirely free for anyone. The way to subscribe and hear the new Atlas 3 songs as they're ready ahead of their official release dates in the months to come is by signing up for my newsletter, which is now called Letters from Sleeping at Last. And the reason for this is I figure anyone who wants to hear about my new music and announcements and upcoming shows, bundling the Atlas 3 subscription into the newsletter just felt like the right way to say thank you so much for reading along, for keeping tabs on me and my songs. So I'll put a link in the show notes to where you can subscribe to Letters and hear each of the Atlas 3 songs as they are completed and ahead of their public release. Okay, let's do it. Let's listen to the next Atlas song, which is called Bloom, in parentheses, Eros. And it's one of 7 songs throughout Atlas 3 that will be inspired by the Greek definitions of love. This one in particular is based on Eros. And I am a mixture of so excited and scared and relieved to finally be here getting to share new Atlas music with you. It means the world to me. This is a total head over heels love song for my wife, and I'm so excited to share it with you and to tell you all about how it was made. So here is Bloom, Eros.
I see you, my world blooms around you. A time lapse in a flash. I see my whole life beside you. I bear witness to the garden that one day will tend to. As futures on earth, the only one I belong to is with you. But I will wait patiently, take all of the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready. When the rain won't let up, I'll try to be strong enough to build a sanctuary. I see how the world blooms around you. I see the pure light you always held on to. I see the impossible odds that you've gone through. Dark clouds pour down, but you don't have to keep swimming if you don't want to. You don't have to keep swimming if you don't want to. I will wait patiently, take all of the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready. When the waves
First, I want to note the subtle connections between Bloom and the song that precedes it in Atlas 3, which is called Asleep. At the tail end of Asleep, I repeat the lyrics, watercolor vivid dreams, I'll paint a future, I'll paint a future.
I'll paint a future, watercolor, vivid dreams.
I really like the idea that Bloom could kind of pick up where these Asleep lyrics left off. So the whole first verse of Bloom is a vision of this colorful future, a vision of my wife's and my life together. The title Bloom and all of the floral references throughout the song are probably admittedly a little bit on the nose for me personally. It is a direct reference to my wife's and my daughters, who each have floral names, Lily and Iris. And so every time I reference any flowers and gardens, these are references to our little garden. As I mentioned earlier, this is the first song inspired by the 7 Greek definitions of love, which include Eros, which is the song Bloom, Philia, Ludus, Storge, Philotia, Pragma, and Agape. And I'll learn how to pronounce all of those a lot better as the project carries on. But these 7 songs will be spread out throughout these upcoming Atlas songs. And as I said, Bloom is the first, which represents Eros. The Greek love, Eros, is probably most commonly known as like a sensual expression of impulsive physical love, but it's actually a lot more than that. Of the 7 Greek definitions of love, Eros is by far the most romantic. It's the most Valentine's Day kind of love. It's the lose your mind, head over heels kind of sweet love, and by far the most flowery of all of the loves. So A Garden Blooming not only felt like the right way to communicate about this passionate, expanding, over-the-top love, but it also felt like the right way to explain how I felt when I fell in love with my wife. Those early years felt like watching a future unfold, kind of like watching a time-lapse video of plants growing. That's what falling in love with my wife felt like. It felt like seeing into the future, and it was a future that I desperately wanted. And so when I thought about my first experiences with Eros, I remembered that feeling, and I wrote this whole first verse.
I see you, my world blooms around you. A time lapse in a flash. I see my whole life beside you. I bear witness to the garden that one day will tend to. This future's on earth, the only one I belong to is with you.
In the spirit of this song being so hard on my sleeve, I'm going to share a bit of my wife's and my story with you. So my wife, Kate, and I, we met and began falling in love about 23 years ago, which is so wild to say out loud. But we met at a music festival. I was just starting out playing music, and the band and I, which, by the way, was called Sleeping at Last even then. I've been making music under that name for literally forever. The band and I at the time, we were playing at a music festival in Southern Illinois, and because we had some mutual friends in common, Kate came to see us play. And so she stopped by the merch table afterwards and said hello. And I really love this little side note of this story. At the merch table, we had a CD player with headphones where people could listen to just demos of the first album because we were in the process of making it and it was not ready yet. And so if anybody liked it, they could pre-order our first CD ever. And so Kate came by the table and pre-ordered very kindly. And later, like well after Kate and I started dating, we found the little carbon paper pad that we were taking orders on and saw that she was actually the very first person ever to pre-order the first Sleeping at Last album. Anyway, we talked a bit at the merch table. She complimented me on the performance, and then we traded AOL instant messaging handles. And from that day on, we flirted a lot over instant messaging chat. And by the way, if you know what AIM is, AOL Instant Messaging, you are also of a certain age. And there was a sound anytime you would sign into the internet, for any of you that don't know, that was objectively horrendous. It sounded so hideous. But when I heard it, it meant that I was about to talk to my wife. And my girlfriend at the time. The anticipation of getting to talk with the girl of my dreams. That this is what that sounds like. Again, such an ugly sound, but it reminds me of one of the most beautiful experiences of my life, which is getting to know my wife. And so it genuinely makes me so happy to hear that hideous sound right now. As you may or may not know, I love including little sound Easter eggs throughout my music, and I knew I wanted to kind of nod to this part of my wife's and my history by including that sound in this song. And it was nearly impossible because it is such an intrusive, horrible sound that no matter what volume you have it at in the mix, it will always poke through. And so I had to basically make it inaudible. So you can feel it more than you can hear it is how I like to explain it. So it's there. It's an Easter egg, but it is barely there. Okay, back to my little love story. After flirting online for many months, eventually Kate came out to visit some family that lived in Illinois where I lived, and we went on our first ever date. I don't even know if we called it that, but it was the first date, and it was the most beautiful of blurs. I was the most nervous I think I've ever been in my entire life, and literally could not eat like at all the entire day. It was completely ridiculous. And after our date, I went home and basically spiraled out. I was such an emotional wreck because I was completely in love with her and was entirely overwhelmed by the what ifs. What if she didn't feel the same way about me? What if she wanted to be with someone else? What if the future I immediately imagined with her wasn't possible? I was just wildly, wildly in love with her. After a year of that long distance kind of young love and actually getting to deeply know each other through hours and hours and hours of instant messaging, chats, and phone calls, she moved from Kansas to Chicago to attend school. And then we were able to actually start living life alongside each other, which felt like the most magical thing ever. And though we were young, shortly after our relationship began, we went through a lot of messy life together. So we started in this absolute dreamlike love story, and then that turned into very real and ugly life external stuff that we just both were going through. And so we walked through all of it together for years and years. And an unusual part of our fairy tale was that we dated for nearly 10 years. And so walking through so much hard stuff together meant that several of those 10 years of dating just felt like kind of a sad time to have a wedding. And so we waited and waited, and I'll own it. Most of the waiting was on me, not for any commitment issues or anything like that. I absolutely knew that she was the one I wanted to do my life with if I had that privilege. And I was just feeling this weirdly like intuitive feeling about the right time is going to come. And even now, I'm not even entirely sure what that meant. All I know is that in retrospect, our deeply committed dating relationship in those 10 years was marriage. We just didn't get to have the party earlier. And that's kind of sad. But we've now been married 13 years, and that makes it 23 years of life together. And I know it sounds so cheesy, but in the spirit of this episode and this song being like a over-the-top love song, I'm just going to fully lean into it. I love this human more than I could possibly say, beyond lyrics, beyond music. I am so blown away by who she is, who she has grown into. And I'm just completely in love with her. I respect and admire her more than any person on earth. I just think she's an incredible human being in every conceivable way. And all of that I say before even touching on her as a mother, which is the most beautiful thing I've ever been privileged enough to witness. So like any and all of the love songs that I've written over these last 23 years, I've written them all with her in mind. And in the writing of this song, I feel so grateful to know and experience love as passionate and sweet as Eros in my relationship with my wife. Throughout the lyrics, there are lots of tiny personal references to my wife and to our love story. And I'll keep most of those between us, but I did want to note a few of them here. The second verse lyrics are, "I see you, the pure light you've always held on to. I see you and the impossible odds that you've grown through. These lyrics are a pretty direct reference to all of the really hard stuff that I've personally seen my wife not only heal from, but grow through. She came out the other side of some deeply hurtful things in life, a somehow stronger and gentler person, and somehow brighter too. And the inclusion of the words pure light is actually the meaning of my wife's name.
I see the pure light you always held on to. I see you, the impossible odds that you've grown through.
Also, the idea of repeating the lyric, I see you, throughout the song felt right to me because it has a bunch of different meanings. First, I believe to be really seen by someone is to be loved by them. And so in the way that I just explained, I see Kate and all that she has walked through in her life to become who she is. Secondly, on a less serious note, I also like that on a surface level, I see you plays into the attraction and desire aspects of Eros. I find Kate incredibly attractive, and so I needed to honor that I have the hots for her throughout this song. And lastly, I liked using these words as a way to point to a future with hope. For example, I see you, how my world blooms around you. Another little nod I wanted to point out is, so my wife is an Enneagram type 3, and the key word in my Enneagram song for 3 is the word worthy, and so I knew that I wanted to include that word in the lyrics somehow to honor my wife's Enneagram type.
I try to be worthy.
Let's change gears, and I would love to share a little bit about how the music of this song came together. It's had quite an adventure getting to the form that you hear it in now. So I've had these piano chords and the vocal melody for a long while now. Actually, the first little iPhone recording that I have of this idea was back in May 2020, so during the pandemic. And I had no idea what I wanted to do with it. Usually I will have a theme that I'm either writing for or a project I'm writing for, or even if I write something that doesn't fit what I'm supposed to be working on, I will kind of catalog it in my mind as like, this is going to totally fit for the theme of X down the road. Obviously I love writing in theme. But this one, I just really enjoyed playing it on the piano. And I wrote this one line of lyrics, which is, hold your head up a little longer, a little longer. And I would play and sing these lyrics for the next couple years after initially writing it in May 2020. And so here's that first little iPhone demo, which is just me messing around. It's very, very, very rough. But this is kind of this is the seed, if you will, where Bloom came from.
So hold your head up a little longer, a little longer. Hold your head up a little longer, a little longer.
Again, I played this around the house so much over the last few years. So much so that my daughter, when I finished this song, I was like, hey, do you want to hear a new song? And she's like, wait, that song's not out already? And she's 9, and she could not believe that I've had a song just hanging out and playing for that long and didn't actually finish it. So, but I think there was something about it that felt very peaceful and calming to me, especially during the pandemic. So I kept returning to this sequence of chords, and I just didn't know where it belonged yet. Eventually, I wrote the first song of Atlas 3, which is called Overture 3/Awake. And initially, I actually included this whole song as part of that song. It basically, at the very tail end of what you now hear as Awake, it would lead into this song. And I had a couple ideas lyrically that would fit into the theme of Awake. And I even recorded bass and drums and a bunch of other instruments to go along with that concept, which would basically make that first Atlas 3 song like an 8 or 9 minute piece of music. So here's a little bit of where this song was headed at that point. totally different direction. And I really loved it too. It was so fun. And I got to record it with incredible drummer, guitarist, and bass player, the same players that played on my Awake song. And so it was part of that same session. And then as I was reviewing it and kind of thinking through what I wanted to do with this song, it still didn't feel like it was in the right direction. And so I kind of put it again on the back burner for another couple years. And this song's had an adventure for sure. As I said, usually I know where songs belong. And the wonderful part about when you don't know where a song belongs is that it feels so good when you finally figure it out, years later down the road, that actually Saturn was a song like that. I had that song in my mind for many, many, many years, and it just never felt quite right until it did. And this song was like that. But the downside of when that happens is you kind of lose your feeling toward it, so it took a long time to return to these chords and this melody and actually hear it fresh and new. And I think when I started working on it as Eros and knowing that it was going to be a love song, it started to kind of have a little bit more life again, and I could hear it entirely new, not as the song that I've been working on for 4 years, but as a song that finally found its theme and found its direction. So once I was certain that this song was Eros, I began working on lyrics. And my family and I have been spending a lot of time living in London, and it has been such a special season for us. So this is one of a few songs that I finished writing during my time in London, which feels like a kind of a special mile marker in terms of my family's adventures. My vocal was recorded at Abbey Road Studios in London, and oh my gosh, it was such a joy to get to work there. And actually, most of the new music that I'm working on was recorded at Abbey Road. That's how much I loved my time there. And so initially, I thought it'd just be like a really fun experience to have. And the team and the facilities are just really special, which is so obvious. But yeah, I was really taken with it. And so the vocals for Bloom were recorded there, and a lot of other music that I'm really excited to share with you soon. By far, my absolute favorite moment of working on this song was hearing the live strings for the first time. I had finished recording my voice and the piano and additional layers, and began working on a string arrangement idea with fake strings, and then I sent it over to my dear friend and longtime collaborator, Sharon Gerber, and her daughter, Anya Katarina Gerber. And I always know that whatever they are going to record and send back will be absolutely stunning and beyond any expectations I could even have. But when they were finished recording and then they sent the tracks back, I felt like I got to hear the song for the first time again. And it was such a beautiful moment. I got really choked up and had goosebumps. And those two things are sort of my litmus test for if a song is heading in the right direction. When I sent along the arrangement ideas, I included a note that just said that this is an over-the-top love song, and I want the strings to be as over-the-top as possible. And I kept using the word indulgent in all caps. And that's not something I would normally aim for in my songs, at least intentionally. And but for this song, a song about this, head over heels kind of love, indulgent is exactly the right word and the right feeling. I just wanted nothing held back. So all the strings that you hear were layer after layer of Sharon playing cello and Anya playing violins. And so it's an orchestra of two, and it just soars and feels so romantic and sweet. A massive thank you to Sharon and Anya for being the best and just for helping me truly hear the song again after a long while of just trying to figure out what it is. And so here are the strings soloed out. I still get goosebumps hearing them play. Thank you so much, Sharon and Anya. Speaking of wonderful collaborations, the artwork for this song is by the ever-brilliant Alicia Edegento, the artist behind all of my Atlas 2 art, including the Enneagram, and it is just such a joy to get to write these Atlas 3 songs and know that each one will receive its own stunning piece of art from Alicia. For Bloom, she beautifully captured the romance and affection in the silhouettes of the couple as they stand face to face, and she captured the passionate and fiery love in the dramatic sky above them, just perfect. She actually finished the art for Bloom before the song was completed, and so as I wrote, I would often look to the art for inspiration and even had it as my computer wallpaper for a while. It just helped me find the heart and tone of this song. So thank you so much, Alicia, for such an incredible, incredible piece of art. I mentioned earlier, but my wife's and my daughter's names are Lily and Iris. And so the garden that I'm referencing throughout is, of course, them. And so I love hiding Easter eggs, as you know, in my music. And so here is the voices of my wife, Kate, Lily, and Iris, which is from a little home video that I made and pulled the audio from.
That's because it looks too different.
Some of it feels the same. You see it?
So even though those sounds are well hidden throughout the songs, you can definitely hear them, but they, for me, I know where they are. And so anytime I hear the song down the road, I will remember that clip. So it's very much like a photo album for me too. So that's partly why I love including these little fingerprint Easter eggs throughout my songs. I really, really enjoyed writing this song. Obviously born out of my love for my wife, Kate. It just felt like such a joy to revisit some of the early years of falling in love and that very specific feeling, that electricity. It was just really fun to try to capture that in the lyrics. And the whole process, including recording this episode of the podcast, just makes me feel so grateful and proud of this life that we're building together and this little garden that we get to tend to, truly. And as I've said, this is the first of 7 songs inspired by the Greek definitions of love, and I'm really excited to explore each one and kind of figure out what they sound like. Next up is Storge, which is familial love, and between having been raised by such a nurturing and loving mother and getting to parent our 2 girls alongside Kate, who is this superhero mom, I just have a ton of inspiration to pull from, and I'm just really excited to explore that beautiful side of love and share it with you. The 7 love songs will be released kind of sporadically throughout Atlas 3. So before you hear Storge, you will hear the next 2 songs in Atlas 3, which are sibling songs. One is called Hurt, and the other is called Heal. And I'm really looking forward to sharing those songs with you just right around the corner. Again, Atlas 3 subscriptions are now totally free just by signing up to my newsletter, which is now called Letters. A link to that in the show notes, of course. And so yeah, by signing up, you will receive early access to every Atlas 3 song as it's completed. And I just am really looking forward to sharing each of those with you so soon. Thank you so much for listening and for letting me share this part of my heart with you. I loved getting to make this song, and I feel really grateful to get to detail all that went into it. Bloom Eros is out now everywhere you listen to music, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever. I really hope you enjoy it, and I hope the rest of your day is so wonderful. I cannot wait to talk to you soon.